Okay, welcome back to the Notorious Show. This is episode 3, but it's the second time Scott and I have gotten together. And this is where we go and we talk about the news of the week, give you our perspective. Over time, maybe we'll bring some other people in to riff with us on this. But right now, Scott and I are going through this. And starting next week, we're going to do this as a live stream. This will be recorded. It'll be up. You guys will be able to watch it right after we do it. So it was a couple-day delay last week. This will be up right away. Going forward, we're going to do the live stream. So you'll be able to get the live stream or right afterwards, whenever it's convenient for you, because it's news and we want to get it out there as much as possible. And we're hoping that a lot of people will start watching this live and we'll be able to bring people in or just respond to comments and questions in the discussion. So look for that. And YouTube, we do have the new Notorious YouTube channel showing up. That's where you were seeing this. So definitely like and subscribe because then you'll get notified. We also have episode 2. I just published. That's with Dandelion. It is the Archipelago open source project. What is that? That's an OpenSea competitor that's going to be open source. That's open source. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons behind why that's going on. Dandelion got together with me to talk about the genesis of that project, and we're going to talk about it every week for the next who knows how long, at least through production, when they get that thing started, because we're going to talk about the founder story. As an open source project, he wants to be very open, or I should say they want to be very open about what they're going to be doing with the project, how they're progressing, and they've already changed the scope and the speed at which they're going because they learned a few things as they went through the process. So all the people who are really interested in how that's evolving will like that. Plus, it's always good to have these founder stories, particularly when they'll give you that inside view that you just so rarely get a look into because everyone's always keeping their cards close to their vest and everything. So that's going to be great. We're going to have other things coming up with artists, but today we're talking the news. And I have my co-host here, Scott Leach. Scott, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be back talking about this stuff.
We set aside a little bit of time each week to talk here because all our other time is taken up talking about this in other places. So this is our time away from the other places to talk here. So Scott, longtime collector in this space, listen to episode 1. You'll get our backgrounds. Know me as Creatorius Rex. Find me on the Twitter. That's all great. Also, people call me Brett Kinsella. That's fine. You can know who I am. Okay. So first thing we want to do is we want to get into the story of the week. So we're not going to make anyone wait. We believe the story of the week is a giant Q3 for NFTs. What's your reaction, Scott?
Yeah, it's huge. And it's been, I forget who it was. I'm going to find it and we can credit it in the description on YouTube or something, but someone was calling it JPEG summer. And that's, that's exactly how it felt to me. Like this massive thing was going on. And I felt like I was screaming to everyone, every sort of person I knew that wasn't into it yet. I was like hyping this stuff up. Like, you got to get in on NFTs now. Like, it's happening right now. Come check it out. But this transition from winter to spring into summer, it's just been absolutely wild how fast the space is evolving and how many people are getting in. And the fact that it's still like, it's still good and it's still going. And I think we're still super early.
Well, I believe that NASDAQ said all of last year there were about $330 million of JPEG trading of all of 2020. And that was a time when we were at all home, but people hadn't really gotten into the idea of this as certainly as the phenomenon that it is now. They hadn't aped in yet for all sorts of different reasons. This past quarter, $10 billion.
It's crazy.
$10 billion. So if I do my math, I believe that's a 30x increase in one quarter over all of last year. Now, let's put this in perspective. About 1.2 billion in Q1 and 1.3 billion in Q2. And a lot of people were thinking, hey, Q2, that's crazy. Now, at least for a month there, May in particular, early May, late April, and then it slowed down, June, sort of the doldrums. People think that's like the great winter. July, big drive. Then we got into August, which was just insane. And then we have all these people saying, it's a recession. What's going on? I can't flip my Can't flip my NFTs every 48 hours. If you look at the numbers, actually, what you'll see this recession was mostly an ETH recession.
Mm-hmm.
So it was down, and there's lots of different ways to look at this. So when you guys look at numbers around how much NFTs you got to look at what the sources are. So I'm looking at the DApp Radar one right now, which gives you the 10 billion, and they say that's across all chains. One of the things that really happened in September was Solana came online with NFTs, and it looks like they sucked up some of the activity that was in Ethereum. Now, a lot of it's probably net new, but they definitely sucked up some of it. So when you put those things together, yes, September was down a little bit from August, but September was so much bigger than all the previous months. It was still a big month.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was noticing the more I started collecting and the more I was becoming conscious of dips in ETH, or when ETH would go up or down, more so than just a normal day, right? You start waiting like, okay, what's going to happen on opens here? People are going to drop prices? Are they going to? And for a while, it seemed like actually the NFTs were picking up, like sales and transactions were picking up despite ETH dipping a little bit. And now it feels like there's a little bit more responsiveness that when ETH goes up, like recently, what's it been, a week or two or something of ETH going up, we've started to see some NFT floors get a little lower. It seems to me that is in response to the rising price of ETH. But then again, who knows? I think that this community is so responsive, and it's just the fact that it's evolving while all this is happening makes it incredibly unique. And it's not like when we make comparisons to, if you compare it to the stock market or something, or it's changing all the time, right? So we saw even the way in which people think about NFTs. We saw the big art boom, like we saw the Nifty Gateway and the Beeple sales. And I think a lot of people latched onto that and thought that was what NFTs would be, is this is a place for artists to sell overpriced JPEGs. Like that seemed to be the big response and the kind of criticism. And then these projects, these community projects that started emerging, I think those got really discounted until recently. We're talking about very short periods of time, right? But for a few months, no one really noticed that stuff, right? No one was paying attention. They were still saying, hey, did you hear about the $69 million Beeple sale? Meanwhile, like Bored Apes is slowly climbing up and Gary launches his stuff. Yeah, I think that we're watching the space evolve while all the other dynamics are happening with the price of ETH and all those sorts of things. So there's so many factors right now. It's really, I don't know, it's a huge opportunity, but I think obviously there's a tremendous amount of risk too. But yeah, it makes it difficult to get incredibly strategic about it. You have to be willing to abandon your preconceived notions and observe what's happening if you really want to take advantage of the opportunities that are around.
Well, I think it's like in stock trading, we would talk about value investors or technical investors, maybe momentum. There's lots of different terms that we would talk about. And we're seeing all of that replicated, much of it not deliberately, right? So, but it's just, these are humans and they sort of understand there's like different ways to do this. I have been hearing a number of people talk about the risks of transacting, because we see all these things. You can look at Apes. You can definitely look at cryptodes, where people came out and they minted it and they made this really nice 3x return on the mint price. And then they're sitting there. One guy on Twitter said, if I'd held, it was basically a $500,000 to $700,000 decision, because he minted a lot really quickly. But he got rid of them all within a couple of days, and he basically walked away from $500,000. So I really like those examples, because not for him, because it's too bad. But I don't even think he was really lamenting it. He's just like, it's a lesson, right? And you've got to think about what you have conviction about. And cryptodes is really interesting. We weren't really planning on talking about that today. I do want to talk about that at some point, but that's a really interesting project because it's got that Bored Ape vibe. It doesn't have the track record yet, so we don't really know. but it's got the vibe, and I missed it. It wasn't really clear to me when it first came out that was, or actually just pre-meant that was going to be that. And so it seems like those are going to come along.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's I like when that happens. When I get so excited about a project that the project itself trumps the possibility to gain value from it. Like, it's fantastic when you buy into something and it goes off. That's a great feeling. But when you just dig a project,
yeah,
that's the piece that's really cool right now.
Yes,
there's so much opportunity to get rich, but so many people are not about that. And it's easy to be that way when everything's on the up and up, right? Like, oh well, I sold my ape for 5 ETH when I could have sold it for 40, but I bought it for like 0.1 or something. It's a win, even though it's not, you know what I mean?
Well, I think it's maybe a loss if you didn't buy in. I personally I'm trying not to buy anything right now because I'm focusing my attention on a project that I'm working on with a bunch of people, a cool team. In fact, I need to give Scott an update because a lot has happened since we've talked in 72 hours, whatever it is. But that was one that it's like, no, geez, just missed it. And it's like Treeverse, I was I've been looking at that for 2 months. And it's just, I was always like buying something else instead because it didn't seem like it was imminent. And then they come out with their big reveal this week, which we should talk about maybe next week when we go the next couple of weeks when we see more. But really, that one really surprised me because it's just not what you would have looked at the alpha and thought that they were going to come up with.
Yeah.
Which is cool. That's what I love about.
Yeah, it's so exciting right now. There's so much stuff coming out. It's hard to keep up. And there's good projects. It's hard to be excited about that many projects and to be involved in those communities. So I definitely hear you on the trying to take a break thing, but I have trouble.
It takes too many cycles. I can only be in so many Discord servers and keep track of what's going on.
Yes.
So so just like everybody will say, really monster quarter. We saw some things earlier this year. Obviously, Beeple, one of the really big things that happened this year, that's going to be remembered for a long time. It's sort of seminal. Bored Ape became one of those. VFriends has certainly become one of those. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Q3 really cemented it that there's a lot of people who are interested in this, brought a lot of new people in, and there's a lot of people who have skin in the game right now. Now, some of that skin is going to become skinned knees when the Taxman cometh next year. But there's if you're holding, you don't have to really worry about it. So that's a key thing to keep in mind. But I think we're looking at maybe a big Q4. We'll see. I'm not seeing necessarily the quality of the projects that I would have expected, given that we've had this delay and you've had more time for people to get in. But it seems like we're certainly heading for an ETH run. And you mentioned this whole idea of ETH adjustment. So I looked at that. I bought when ETH adjusted a bit back, I bought a mutant ape, and I noticed it didn't adjust very quickly. It's a bit of a lagging. People aren't right in there because so it was a significant move in ETH. I went in, got something at what it was previously listed at. Was it really that much better of a deal than it was 2 days ago? Well, I mean, maybe I got a 5% discount or something on it. But people aren't necessarily doing that. And there's a theory that some people have that people who are in the Ethereum blockchain are basically swapping between NFTs and Ether to try to look at what has the best run-up potential. But frankly, they sort of run together.
Yeah. And I've wrestled with this because there's like I think of myself as an artist, like someone who wants to make things and bring value into the world. But I not to say I don't like making money or having money, because that allows me the economic freedom to make more art. But there's always this thing of like, oh, the tension between all this money in crypto, and I think those things can coexist in a really wonderful way. And that's what's happening right now. And even if there are people that are just in it to try and make more, all that money that's just in it is what's enabling these artists and these developers to build really cool projects and not even have to come up with a whole robust. It's really based on the team, right? Like, hey, look, here's what we got. Give us, if you're into this and you want to take part in the project, we're going to try and make something out of this and you can help us out. I don't know. That's awesome. Like this, you couldn't get 2 artists and 2 devs together previous and do something like this and generate this kind of wallet that you could then go and build up a game or IP on or merch or whatever you want to do. Like that just wasn't possible.
Well, it's essentially the early Renaissance has come back. It's a patronage model where it's pre-funding the projects. It's betting on, not to say that people aren't doing things ahead of time, because they are. There is art associated with it. But
absolutely, yeah.
But a year ago, the sale of the art was the end of the process. Today, the sale of the first piece of art, however you want to think about it, whether it's a PFP, whether it's purely for aesthetic value, tends to be viewed as the beginning of the process. So there's still people who are selling things that it's the end of the process. So that exists. Yeah. A lot of the art block stuff, I think, falls into that category, which is fine. But we just have this new approach, and there's a lot of talk about the creator economy. My view is that maybe the most interesting creators out there right now are the people who are launching NFT projects, because they're basically pre-funding what their creator enterprise is going to be. Yes. And it just gives them a lot of flexibility. We see it, like people, they put out their roadmap, but I've seen people actually change their roadmap. Mm-hmm. They got funded, and then the community came up with some good ideas. So like, you know what, we're going to scrap version 2 of the roadmap, or at least we're going to change it to accommodate these things because it's a better idea.
Yeah. And that's fantastic. I mean, it reminds me so much in a way of how, like, I worked at a lot of startups, like how you get VC money, or how you used to. Like, everyone has this notion that you put together this deck and this business plan. Like, there's no business plan for social media. Like, you have an idea and someone comes up with some absurd equation to value engagement, but it's based on this like future promise just to justify a massive spend. But the truth is, like, in my experience, a lot of those VCs are investing in the team and in what do you got? What can you show us so far? And who's this team? And do we want to roll the dice because we think you can make it? And especially at a small, like, obviously there's when you're asking for a lot of money, it's different, but those seed rounds, when you're just getting money to get going, that's a lot of times how it goes. And this is kind of just stretching that out so anyone can do it.
But I will not call it a seed fund round, because I don't believe that people who buy NFTs are investors. So I just want to be on the record.
Yeah. Yes. And that's the weird thing about this, is it's such a weird mix of so many different things that we've seen before, all like stirred up. And so I think as humans, we want to recognize the pattern we know, right? And that's why people say, oh, well, it's just art, because they haven't seen the utility yet. And then you start to see the utility come in. And we talked about it last time, like Twitter verified NFT profile pictures. Like, once that happens, okay, now we see a new type of utility. It's not just art anymore. It's now status. And then we see, like, when we start to see people use these for concerts and all sorts of things, we'll have more stories. And then, yeah.
Okay, great. So just one last point. Is the fourth quarter going to be above 10 billion or below 10 billion in NFT trading?
I don't have any clue. My gut says it's going to be a little lower this time. I think it's going to,
I'm leaning that way too.
Yeah. And I don't think it's because, and people might misconstrue that, I don't think it means because there's less interest. I think that as people become more interested in it, and as we all get more educated, our mastery of this stuff is going to demand more. It's not going to be enough just to, like, okay, cool, I was able to ape in and mint a bunch of these. I want to do something else with this. And I want a richer experience or whatever the next evolution is. So I think we're going to see it dip a little, unless ETH goes bananas,
that's what I'm thinking. So I think if we did a dollar average for ETH, and the new projects, I think it'll be less. However, the asset value of the NFT collections is likely to go up just because it looks like ETH might be poised for a run.
Yes.
Do your own research. This is not financial
Yes.
advice or observers. Okay, let's move on. News, brand new, just a couple hours ago. Gary Vee revealed something that he's been working on with Major League Baseball. Some pretty cool multimedia NFTs, which I thought was a great idea. What'd you think of that?
I think it's awesome. I love baseball cards. As a kid, I was huge into baseball cards. I think that there's a massive nostalgia factor. I think the fact that Gary Vee also is deeply passionate about cards means that he's gonna, whatever his involvement is gonna, I think it's gonna feel authentic and not just like a cash grab or something.
Right.
It looks exciting. I'm into it, and I think it's going to bring a lot of different folks to the space. Collectors, baseball card collectors, and just people that might not even know about NFTs yet. And I think when they get a taste of it, it's going to be exciting.
It's going to be a bridge. And, the interesting thing about it is the artwork, and people have, I think, a lot of chance to see it over the next couple of weeks. Gary showed it. He sort of indicated that he wasn't supposed to show it because it was sort of just to his followers, but he also does that kind of thing where he says it. So you never really know, but one of the things he talked about with the designers, he said, I like how you made it look like a card. And so it starts out looking like a card, and there's this multimedia aspect, and then it sort of finishes up looking like more of a traditional baseball card, a little shinier, a little more bling to take advantage of the pixels. But I think that's really cool. It was inevitable that Major League Baseball was going to follow NBA, and we've seen the deal with NFL and La Liga. It's obviously they're going to do it. Very interesting. They're going to do, or at least there's in some way partnering with Gary and his crew, which not only launched one of the most popular, most successful NFT projects of the year. I think it's going to go down as probably one of the top 3. They also created a capability to help brands launch NFT projects, which a lot of people missed because Gary Vaynerchuk owns a $400 million annual revenue advertising agency, or marketing agency, I should say. A lot of that's ad buys and things like that. But he has that proclivity to sort of work with the marketers. He has the reputation of doing well by them and really helping a lot of them be successful in Web 2. And now he's positioning himself to be one of the people that's going to help brands go from Web 2 to Web 3.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, he's positioned himself very well because he's obviously passionate about it. And now that he's going to be able to educate other brands, and he has
Okay. Well, more news from Gary Vaynerchuk. He pocketed $1.2 million and then immediately spent, I think, $50,000 of it buying a Warhol, which is interesting. So
I love that. Yeah.
He sold 5 sketches. Are they sketches? Well, they are sketches, so that's technically what they are. He considers them doodles, the things he just came up with while he was on long, boring conference calls or something like that, I guess. So he sold them, and it was $1.2 million for the 5. The highest selling one was the elephant, empathetic elephant, which was a little over $400,000. I think the tiger was 3rd, maybe.
Yep.
And you're a tiger holder.
Yes.
Do you have any of the others?
I didn't have any of the others that were listed. No. None of the sketches.
So here's the backstory, which is really interesting. It wasn't just like, oh, Gary did this and it's so popular, everyone's surprised. And he was like, went through the trash and found the original sketches before they were turned into pixels. No, he did the final version of all of these, I think it's 288 items, sort of after he sort of decided, did them. And then they used them as the models to build the JPEGs. And then he immediately took them over to basically a trading card authentication house, who then put them into what we would call slabs in the collector's world. So rated them, graded them and said, these are authentic. They're the condition that they're in, put them in a slab so that people can't mess with them. He did this like in April of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because he knew there was a chance
Yeah.
that I think it's faster than he thought it was going to happen. I think he thought it was going to happen, but I don't think he thought he was going to be at Sotheby's this quickly, and that he was going to be selling. He was for 5 of 288 sketches, by the way. Well, actually, it's more than 288 because they also indicated that he's done a number of other ones. They showed the optimistic octopus, which is not part of the current collection. So I don't know how many he held back, but they very deliberately held some back so they would have them in the back pocket because they're going to do a second collection, all these things. But he knew from the beginning that there was going to be this interest in the physical art. So we've got this whole thing. It's digital art. It's digital art. No, it's physical art too.
Yeah. And I'm still fascinated by what happens with that. If the digital art will be worth more than the physical art, that idea fascinates me because that would be really meaningful for NFTs as a whole, for people to see that our sort of like belief that the physical thing has more agreed value than the digital thing is it's just interesting to me.
Right. Well, I think that is the physical had more value, I think, because that tiger is going for what right now?
At one point, I think the floor on that. Well, I'm speculating now because it's a 1 of 1, but the floor on the bubble gums was 60 ETH at one point.
Okay, so that'd be about $180,000.
Yeah, so
I'm pretty sure that went for 260. I don't know if I've got it here in my notes. I can find it, but
yeah.
So I think that the original actually went for a little bit more than that, but that might not be true for all of them. So it depends. And you made up a really important point because it's one of a collection, but the collection has things with a background, which is sort of the key differentiator. And you have bubblegum. Is that the one you have?
Yeah, I have the bubblegum one. Yeah.
So it's a bubblegum background. So that makes it actually a 1 of 1, even though the tremendous tiger over the tremendous tigers that's on top of the bubblegum is the same as all the other versions.
Exactly. Yeah. It's super interesting. And it's funny to me that his community, well, a lot of things happen, so it's hard to tie these things together, but I know the floors on some projects have dropped a little, and gut tells me that that's because ETH prices went up. I think there were other factors as well, but I know that when he announced the auction, some of his community were like, "Oh, I was hoping for bigger news."
But this goes back to last week. We were talking about this idea of mainstreaming. I mean, Sotheby's and Christie's are all over this. They want to be part of it. They're into collectibles. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They want to be part of it. And it's just, when they do this thing, all the major media covers it. And you know what's really funny is Christie's in their coverage of it, because they basically do a press release afterwards of all the things that they've done. Vaynerchuk was like an afterthought in there. So there were a couple other things. They talked about the curio cards because that was the first time they'd ever accepted ETH for a purchase, or Ether. And then they mentioned a few other things, like the artists, sort of the old school artists that were on display, and they'd had good sales as well.
Yeah.
And then he was and then other people, and it's like Vaynerchuk was one of like 4 people mentioned. But if you actually looked at the news coverage, it's about Gary Vaynerchuk, because Gary Vaynerchuk is known by the news organizations. He was
and
it wasn't the other creators that were being interviewed. So
yeah, and I think he loves that stuff. I mean, he loves being the underdog. Like
I looked at that thing from Christie's, and I'm sure he's like, he had a huge day. He was so excited. I bet he saw that, and he's just like, they still don't believe it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sure he loves it. And the fact that he bought the Warhol piece is just awesome. If Andy Warhol was alive right now in this time, I'm confident he would be doing something in this space. Like
well, think of what he was doing. He was doing basically generative stuff anyway, if you think about it.
Yeah.
He was doing these repeating patterns.
Yeah. I just think that's just a neat story.
Okay, let's move on. I sort of have a I'm not really focused on talking down projects. I'm sure some will merit it, and one of the things we're going to talk about certainly merits it. But a lot of people are talking about BoringStone, and so it's like Rolling Stone. It's like a magazine cover. Good idea. And they worked with a couple of different projects, including Bored Ape and Fame Lady Squad. And they put it up, and it wasn't selling out right away. And I was like, why is it not selling out? So I went, I was like, oh, I think I'll mint one of these. But since they've been live for a little bit, let me just go see what's going on in OpenSea. And I was like, really? I really felt like, so what they would do is they would take an ape that was undifferentiated, and that's the center of the magazine cover. And then the background might be a little different. They had a couple variants of that. And then the other really big thing that was different was what the headlines were, the different storylines. So like everyone knows you get a magazine, it's got like 3 headlines on the left and 2 on the right. And it's like, and you don't want to miss it. Right. But when it comes to art and you're looking at a portfolio, all you see is the same apes over and over again, or the same Fame Lady Squads over and over again. It just doesn't look that different. It just looks like it's all the same.
Yeah. I hear you on this one. I struggle a little bit. I think it reminds me of these, like, I think it was the 80s or maybe the 90s. You could go and get your picture taken and put on a magazine. Like you go to the boardwalk or somewhere. By me, it was the boardwalk. I live in California, Santa Cruz boardwalk. You would go and get your face on the magazine, and they would do this thing. And it feels like I absolutely love this thing of creating new IP from NFTs, new NFTs out of NFTs. That thing, I think, is going to lead to some amazing stuff. So the fact that this is trying that and pushing it forward I love that. But there is the novelty. At what point is novelty not enough? And I don't,
they used, why did they only, I don't know how many they used, a dozen different apes, maybe 2 dozen. I mean, that's a small portion of the collection. They could have made it look a lot different.
Well, what about if I'm an ape owner, I can go in and sign a smart contract to let my ape's likeness be used. And if someone buys that one, I get a teeny tiny bit of the action or something. Like,
that'd be cool. That's people were talking about doing that. I don't think it's happened yet, but okay. So in any event, this might turn out to be a great project. Maybe there's other things. But right now it's like, geez, it can't just be about the project. The art has to be good too.
I found, this is an aside, but it's relevant to this. And I think it's really cool thing. And I think we're going to see a lot more of it. So there's these artists, like, a 3D artist who's creating something, or illustrator or whatever, and they're on Super Rare, or they're on Foundation, and they're trying to sell their NFTs, and some are having luck, but there's a lot of people. It's hard. But I've found some amazing artists on there. And one of them has been doing these derivatives of Bored Apes. So someone approached her and said, "Hey, can you make my Bored Ape into a model?" Like, okay. And it was like so freaking cool, man. And I was blown away. I was one of the first people to buy her art just because I loved it. And I saw this artist was just hustling on Twitter every day, making amazing art, and hadn't got a sale yet. And I was like, I like this art. 2, this person is hustling. Like, I'm buying this. And in the course of like following them and having a sort of back and forth relationship and seeing this happen, I reached out and just said, "Hey, that's really cool. I have an ape. I'm curious, like, tell me how you do this and how you." She's like, "Well, here's how it works." And then it's like, yeah, it's probably going to be like, I forget how long, because there's a 6-person waiting list already she's got doing these things. Like,
that's amazing.
That's awesome. And the artwork is so fabulous. So that's what I'm excited for. Someone doing I don't even want to say this because it's such a great idea, but I'm not going to do it. So someone should. We need a platform where someone can put up their NFT they have rights to and let artists come in and just choose the one they want to make derivatives of. And then they get a little bit.
Oh yeah.
The owner gets
just like a little bit of, it's basically like, so it's a marketplace. It's like a swap meet. What is it?
Yeah.
Something like that. Oh, well, it'd actually be very similar to just like what they do at Design Crowd or 99 Designs.
There's this whole remix culture that I think is going to emerge out of this. That's just going to be like, it's going to blow our minds. Like when you can get lots of people working together on something that have specific areas of expertise, we're going to see stuff that's just, I'm excited about that. I think that's going to be huge. I don't even think we can know how big it's going to be or how good it's going to be yet. But if we did go back to the Renaissance, and I know like there's going to be people that are going to get mad about this, but like if freaking you had Da Vinci doing something and then Michelangelo, like these people riffing off each other and remixing each other's work, like they were doing that to some degree anyway. Like each person would do something and they would
one up each other. Yeah.
But this notion of actually being able to collaborate via a smart contract, like there's going to be I don't know. I'm just so optimistic and excited about what's going to happen in that space.
Yeah. Speaking of hustlers, I had someone approach me. He's basically doing, he or she, I don't actually know. It's on Twitter. They are taking apes, and I have a mutant. I'm sort of the lower class ape, but they're all very nice to me. But that's sort of where I could get in based on when I bought, which was not cheap either. But so they are just hustling. They're saying, like your ape, would you like me to do it? I think it's 0.03 ETH or something like that. It basically turns it into a graffiti style. I saw a couple examples. I was like, yeah, sure. What the heck? I mean, maybe that's $120, $130 or something like that. I don't know. It might be a 10-minute process. I don't know, but I'm interested to see what it looks like. It just seemed like a really cool thing to do. So I think apes have got that going on. We'll see if that happens for some of these other collections where people are that into it that they want these variants.
I mean, that's something that you could do over years, right? You start accumulating all these artists' interpretation of your apes, and then package all that stuff in one collection to sell. Like you could curate your own story around this. There's some neat things.
Let me tell you one of the things. So I've got this ape, I've got one mutant, and I've got my eye in another mutant. So I was thinking, well, sort of depends on like, you have a much larger wallet than I do, but I'm always just sort of thinking, well, would I just sell the other ape? What would I do? If I got the new one? And I was like, oh, well, it'd be even more, it would be very cool that even if I sold it, I had this graffiti version of it, like during my time that I had it. So I had this like memento. But it did occur to me that once I get this memento, I might not want to separate the pair, the graffiti version versus the real version. And so it might actually drive more. We'll see what happens. And we'll see if I can get the ape. There's a specific ape I'm trying to get that I think is just better fit for me, but we'll see how that plays out.
Well, I used the serum on one of my apes. So I have the ape, I have its mutant version. And then I bought one of those backpacks. What was that 10X? Was it the 10X project?
Yeah. 10.
Something
K2 or something. Yeah, it's got some letters in there,
but it was it just looked ridiculous, this backpack, so like garish and over the top, but I couldn't help myself. It was just the idea that it was just hilarious to me. And so now I have this mutant ape and this backpack of the ape,
but now you can't get rid of the mutant.
And that's the same thing that I keep thinking is like, oh, if I hit up this artist to do a 3D version of this ape, like then I'll start to build this whole, like, I don't know. It definitely it triggers that collecting thing, right?
Okay. So in any event, we're sort of off topic here a little bit, but BoringStone, I'll be interested to see what happens with that. I'm not impressed. And they did do a press release, which was, maybe Vaynerchuk did this, but like of the sort of the organic PFP projects over the last 6 months, I think it's the first time I've ever seen a press release associated with it, which actually I thought was a little strange.
Yeah, it is. I do think there's something to be said for doing marketing stuff in ways that don't necessarily make sense, because then you sometimes get eyeballs that it's so strange. People just like, wait, what?
Well, it strikes me though that's an organization, and it is some sort of organization. Like people have come together. I think they're forming like a company, which is fine. I'm all for that. I think that's actually good for the community if you've got some structure to, as opposed to just 3 or 4 folks who are just going to have different objectives over time. But I kind of felt like it was a way to get press, so they then could raise money to support it, which is fine. I just thought it was interesting, and really what we need is guerrilla marketing in this space. If anyone picks up on
Pun
that.
intended.
Okay. So, but we have an even bigger interesting news story that's on the negative side. Evolved Apes. Big rug pull, 789 Ether. Holy cow, that's big. I think that's just under 3 million right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have spent much time looking at that. That's not a project that I was following, thankfully, I guess. But not only did the founder like just disappear, shut down the website, a bunch of other things, still getting 4% commission on OpenSea for trades.
Yes. Yeah. It's, I've been following like how the owners are trying to find some other solution. I think that some of this is like just my optimistic side. I think some of these projects are going to end up, these rug pulls are going to be good for people. Like the community that formed around the rug pull, that's almost going to be like its own like glue that gets them to do something else, whether they're able to take the NFTs and do something with them. In this case, paying 4% to that same person is not acceptable.
You've got to figure something else out.
Yeah, if they can burn them and then, I don't know, this is probably illegal, but duplicate the artwork and burn them and then if the person wants to file a copyright claim, they can come out of the dark and do it. And
then they would be identified. The anonymity would be lost once they filed the
exactly. But I think there's a way to, I think someone's going to, if it hasn't happened already, a beautiful thing's going to happen where someone creates an NFT project and abandons it, and the community takes it from there and makes something amazing out of it.
Well, I almost did that about a month ago. There was a project that I had done a little bit in, and they'd done something. And so I had a few, and it looked like they were walking away, and we'd actually taken some steps to do something. Then this team was still around, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we'd really like you to do something." But then I'm like, "Well, what are you going to do? Because I don't want to do the same thing you're doing. Are you doing something?" Well, we can't say. So I was like, "Oh, well, this is just okay. That's great.
Yeah,
You're going to be cryptic. That's your thing." But I'm not going to do a big collab just speculatively on this. The key thing, just if this happens to you, and if you're in Evolved Ape or anything else, you need to get your own Discord server set up very quickly and get people over, because as soon as they shut down the Discord server, people are scattered to the wind. It's going to be really hard to bring them back. I mean, you can go and you can find wallets, and there's other things you can do later. But if you can get that momentum right away and get people into a new Discord server, create a new community, or recalibrate the community, you can probably do something with it. So that would be my recommendation to folks.
Yeah. And I mean, do your research. Sometimes you just don't know, like it looks legit and you want to get in early. But I think the more you spend time here, the more you start to get a spidey sense, or like something smells off.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if there certainly are more people who are talking about like, how do you evaluate an NFT project? And I hear more and more people saying, I give a higher confidence level if I know who the founders are, if they're public, IRL.
Yes.
And that was just not a thing 3 months ago.
You're right. It's changing all the time, right? Yeah.
And there's still, I'd say certainly most of the things that are going out right now, the founders are remaining anonymous, which is fine. I mean, that's worked out really well in a lot of these instances. But it's just like, as if you're in this and you're thinking about, okay, well, is this going to be around? It's much harder for people that are known to just walk away. They could do it, but there's a reputation.
Yeah. And when I suggested that people check it out, I've fallen for I've made some bad choices. That's another thing, that if you really are interested, you have to, it's at this stage, that kind of stuff is going to happen. You just have to roll with the punches and learn your lesson. And hope that it's not so devastating, and just try and be as smart as you can. But and I think sometimes there's a difference between a rug pull where someone does what happened in this case and just clearly it was a heist from the get-go, or the team just disbands and can't it becomes overwhelming, or they can't maintain it, or they don't agree, and the project just sort of fizzles that way. I think that's a totally different thing than something that's intentionally malicious.
Do you think OpenSea should stop paying the secondary to the creator?
I don't know. I don't think I do. I'm like pretty fundamentally a purist that like we have to respect the code. But I'm sure there's a use case where I would disagree with that.
Yeah, maybe.
Something
It
really
seems like
bad
they have the
was
relationship
happening.
with the creator sort of more so than the buyers in this case. I think, it's the contract, right? So they honor the contract.
Yeah, I think that's what you got to do, and then just find a clever way. Yeah, I don't know.
Everyone could do private sales.
Yes, that's my gut right now. But I'm sure there's a use case where I'd change my position on that.
Yeah, you could create a new marketplace which is just for private sales of contract of assets that you want to get around the contract on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That seems like that seems too simplistic, but we'd have to think about that. Okay. Another thing, Nifty Gateway. They used a ranked auction for a Beeple piece earlier this year. The person in second place wound up having to pay $600,000.
$650.
Yeah, $650. So it was a little over $1 million. The piece went for. The final bidder, the first loser of the bid, had bid like close to whatever the 1.2 million was. But then I don't know all the mechanics, but I think it's like everyone who was bidding was going to get a piece based on where they were. And I think it was like there's some cascading thing where like the second person has to pay half.
Yeah.
And then the third person and the buyer in this case said, well, wait a second. You changed.
Yeah.
So this the rules of the ranked auction changed between the time you set it up and the auction. So I started out originally with one thing. Maybe I opted in. I don't know when you did the change afterwards. But it seems ridiculous that I should have a non-original, so a duplicate of a series.
Yep.
And I should pay a lot more than the person in third place, but basically have the same thing because I don't have the original. I've got just one of many copies. Yeah.
It just feels bad. It's unclear to me if it was communicated poorly or if it just wasn't communicated. And if it wasn't communicated, it's just so bad.
So it's Nifty Gateway, right? So here's it gets better because he says, I'm not going to pay it. Okay. Nifty Gateway froze his wallet.
Yeah. That's
now he cannot trade in his wallet. That's potentially a very significant thing. They basically froze his assets. What have most of the people who have gotten into this space for a while or been in the space for a while, what was one of the things that drew them here? Decentralization.
Yeah, exactly. It goes against everything that this is supposed to be about. It's just bad all the way around. I don't think it's good for the. Yeah.
Well,
I bought one piece on Nifty Gateway and I bridged it out immediately because the whole thing struck me as odd. It did allow you
about whether OpenSea is really different.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not as controlled, but
yeah, no, I think those are the
centralized.
Yeah, and well, it's back to the previous question we just talked about: is should OpenSea on the Apes one, should they change those contracts so the person doesn't? I think there's this stuff is so hard to figure out. I mean, that's why we have a Supreme Court in the United States to help solve complex things like this.
This is cross-border. I don't even know. I guess OpenSea's in the U.S. Nifty Gateway is a U.S. company. Well, the other thing too is we've got. Listen, it's Nifty Gateway, so we've got the Winklevoss twins involved in this, and so Gemini. What is that? Is that a gateway to decentralized finance, or is it really just hijacking what would have been decentralized finance and making it centralized on Web3?
Yeah, this stuff is so I am all about the decentralized thing, and I think locking up someone's wallet is bad news.
You're all about
But
decentralized, and yet you've been playing around a lot in Solana recently.
I have been.
So you might be
But I do
of two
think,
minds here.
yeah, I do. Well, look, I know I love that vision and I like the decentralized thing, but I also know that I also love user experience. And I know that to create, there's a certain amount of walled garden you need to create a user experience that is really satisfying and allows people to
Yeah.
be onboarded to this new technology. And I don't think that those things are inherently evil at all.
Yeah.
But there's points where I don't know, that just
You might be
that
working on something that has centralization.
yes, I've by my whole
Compromised.
working with Rally is all sidechain, right? So I'm in a weird, and I tend to be the voice of like, well, here's what's happening on mainnet. Even though, again, I think it boils down to the user experience. It also boils down to like the intentions of the folks that are running that, and
I think it's
yeah.
I think it's all fine. I mean, as long as you have significant portions that are decentralized, it's absolutely going to be reasons and rational decisions made about having certain elements that are decentralized.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this seems
and it's a spectrum too, right? Like you can choose where you want to. It doesn't have to be all or one, but I think it does you do have to be transparent about what it is so that people know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to be transparent if the use cases haven't popped up yet. But if you can at least try and say, look, hey, yeah, we're a side chain, or we're holding your wallet. It's a custodial wallet. We're a Nifty Gateway. If you don't pay us, we're going to not release, like, and maybe it does say that somewhere in the fine print, but they need to do it in a way that feels right and not.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any real negative fallout for any of these folks right now, but it's just all these little things come along. And I will say that all these layer ones, sort of the layer ones that can really claim decentralization right now, they're like, look at all these bad centralized things. All the layer ones were actually centralized in the beginning because there were only a couple nodes,
Yep.
And,
exactly. Yeah.
And so it's basically a feature of every new chain that there's going to be the risk of centralization. And it's not just that the future risk, it's the present risk of centralization, because when you start, there's not that many nodes. And so the question is, can you live long enough as a layer one so that you become decentralized? And some aren't going to do that, right? Some are saying, we're still going to be centralized because there's applications for that. Okay, so we're running short. I think what we should do is let's do a nod to the Mechaverse, and we're going to save the tip for next week. So we'll come back with a good tip for folks. I think Scott has one for you. We're not going to give it to you now. You have to come back next week. That's your call to action. Don't miss us. And I think next week we're going to be live. So right now I'm going to say it is noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific next Wednesday. But check the show notes just in case we change.
Yes.
But that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to be here every week. That time it's good. It's midweek. We'll have a couple days ahead. We'll be able to do a little look forward. I'm tempted to say the biggest news this week is, aside from the Q3 numbers coming in for NFT trading, is Mechaverse going live. Well, the raffle is going on as we speak. It's maybe 20 minutes left in that or something like that. I actually can't get it to work. I've connected my wallet.
Yeah, I'm having trouble.
You're supposed to do the second connection to Discord or Twitter so they can validate you, but that just keeps failing. I think I was connected to another site with my MetaMask, and it got confused or something like that. So I may have actually been through the process. There's no way for me to know, although other people have told me that you get a little notification at the bottom. So with that said, they were able to get like 100,000 people in the Discord in 48 hours. I believe there's 200,000 in the Discord right now. It's hard to tell when you're in there. So with 8888, mechas available. That's less than 1 in 20 chance. And by the way, you can do 2, so that would be 1 in 40 if everyone wanted the 2. Maybe all those people didn't do it, but it's probably something like 1 in 20 to 1 in 40 getting in. So the one thing everybody listening today can take heart in is if you win the raffle, you're going to have something that there's probably a lot of people will be interested in the secondary. And if you don't, the founders have already said they're going to do a second mint, which will be different. I assume it's going to be a different collection or maybe an additional or something like that. But there's going to be more coming from them. And I think it's not going to be very long.
Yeah. This one will be exciting to watch how it plays out. I couldn't get the raffle thing going either. I've been kind of into doing watching things get onto OpenSea early and seeing what happens because I kind of like the strategy of looking through this stuff. It's just something I get excited about. But this one feels like right out of the gate they're going to be listed pretty high.
Oh, we'll this is a monster. It's very interesting. They've got it seems like a good team. And a lot of really interesting ideas, and we'll just see how it goes. Scott Leach, this has been very fun.
Yes.
I'll just leave you with this. Why don't you say what will you be looking at over the next week? What will be interesting to you? Anything in particular?
Well, I'm going to see what happens with this project with the Mechaverse and the OpenSea specifically, like the secondary market. I'm really curious about. I am also looking at Solana stuff a little bit just to learn and see what's up. So
next week we're definitely talking about Solana.
Yes. So I've been doing a little of that just out of curiosity, a little bit on the NFT front, but more just understanding the network and how it's different from what I've been doing.
I hope that I'll have time to do that. I own some Solana, not a lot, probably not enough to do anything really significant, but I just haven't gone through the process of setting up new wallets so that I can participate in these. But maybe between now and next Wednesday, I'll be able to compare notes, or I'll just interrogate you as someone who's a total noob, not even a noob, someone's pre-noob who will ask the dumb questions that you can answer.
Yeah, I hope I can.
Okay, everybody, this has been the Niftorious Show. This is episode 3. We've got a lot of really cool things coming up. Do subscribe, so then you'll get notified. Follow me on the Twitter at CreatoriousRex. I created a whole new Twitter. I've got another Twitter profile. I created a whole new one just for this space because I just wanted to have one Twitter profile that's just like all NFTs all the time. And so, which is sort of funny because I've had a Twitter account, I think since 2007. So this is the first time I've had, I obviously have been involved in things where like business accounts, but this is the first time I've had a second account. And it's been sort of fun. It's like, I get to start over. There's no baggage. I just get to work on what I want and just sort of be like, so. And your Twitter?
Scott Leach, SKOTLEACH. That's me on Twitter and Instagram and pretty much everywhere else. The unique spelling gets me lots of, I get my name. So.
Okay, Niftorians, look for us next week. We got lots of other cool things coming on. You might actually go to our Discord server, but just go to niftorious.com. There's like lots of buttons you can push there. Those will take you to the Discord server. We'll get you news and those types of things. So we've got a lot of really cool things planned for the next month, including some announcements that I think will be interesting to people in the space. But until then, happy hunting.